As the world was getting ready for the 2012 Olympics, I was watching two Canadian marathoners, Lanny Marchand and Krista Duchesne, who I was hoping would be on the Olympic team that year. At the time, there were not many fast female marathoners in Canada, so it was exciting that I would be able to cheer for them. Unfortunately, they were a few seconds off of the Canadian Olympic standards, which were actually faster than the Olympic standards that they had both achieved. And so Team Canada wasn't sending them to the Olympics. I thought that was extremely unfair since they were still the fastest female marathoners in the country. It was even more unfair because a year later in 2013, Lanny would break the Canadian women's marathon record, which stood for 28 years. With no Canadians in the women's marathon at the Olympics, I looked to our neighbors in the South, where Shalane Flanagan, Des Davila, now Des Linden, and Kara Goucher had made the US team. I read all about them in Runner's World and was really excited when Kara announced the release of her memoir, which we're going to review today. Hi, and welcome to the Running Book Reviews podcast, where we review running books written for runners, about runners, and by runners to help you decide if you'd like to read the book for yourself. We also hope that listening to us chat about running can help keep you motivated about your own running, or maybe inspire you to try something new. My name is Liz, and with my co-host Alan, we are going to talk about Kara Goucher and Mary Pilon's book, The Longest Race.
The Longest Race is Olympic distance runner Kara Goucher's memoir. Kara grew up with Olympic dreams. She excelled at running from a young age and was offered a Nike sponsorship deal when she graduated from college. Then in 2004, she was invited to join a secretive, lavishly funded new team, dubbed the Nike Oregon Project. Coached by distance running legend Alberto Salazar, it seemed like the opportunity of a lifetime. Although Alberto initially let her train with the team because he was more interested in her husband Adam Goucher, his focus shifted once she won a world championship medal. She later went to the Olympics and stood on the podium at the New York and Boston marathons, just like her coach. Those podiums are what the world saw. But behind the scenes, Salazar pushed the limits of anti-doping rules and created what Kara experienced as a culture of abuse, the extent of which she reveals in her book for the first time. Meanwhile, Nike stood by Alberto for years and proved itself capable of shocking, misogynistic corporate practices. So let's tell you a little bit about Kara in terms of her background and Mary Pilon, who helped her write the book. Kara Goucher is a three-time NCAA champion, two-time Olympian, winner of the silver medal at the 2007 World Championship in the 10,000 meters, and a podium finisher at the Boston and New York marathons. She's a running analyst for NBC Sports. She co-hosts the hit running commentary podcast Nobody Asked Us with Des and Kara. That's with Des Linden.
Mm-hmm.
As well as the Clean Sport Collective podcast promoting fair play in sports. She lives in Boulder, Colorado with her Olympic runner husband, Adam, and their son, Colt. Her website is karagoucher.com. And Mary Pilon. Mary is a journalist focused primarily on the worlds of sports and business. She's the author of the best-selling books The Monopolists and The Kevin Show, the co-editor of Losers, Dispatches from the Other Side of the Scoreboard, and co-host and co-author of the audio series Twisted, the story of Larry Nassar and the women who brought him down. Her work regularly appears in the New Yorker, Esquire, Bloomberg BusinessWeek, Vice, New York, and the New York Times, among other publications. She's worked as a producer with NBC at the 2016 Rio Olympics and on HBO's forthcoming documentary BS High. She is currently co-directing a documentary about pickleball for Peter Berg's film 45. Pilon previously was a staff reporter with The Times on the sports desk and at the Wall Street Journal, where she covered various aspects of business and finance. A native of Eugene, Oregon, Mary started reporting for her hometown paper, The Register Guard, as a teenager and was a wildly mediocre athlete. I guess she said that about herself. I
She
hope
said
so.
that about herself. Yeah.
Okay, so great athletic background for Kara and immense journalistic background for Mary.
So together they were a powerhouse in this book. So we couldn't get either of them on. So what we thought we would do was just highlight a few things that we thought about the book. And maybe we can start with why we actually wanted to read this book in the first place.
Yeah, I guess as a sort of postscript to talking about the book without the authors, we're making the podcast when effectively the book has been immensely successful, and there's a huge amount of sort of PR and social media programs around it, and it in fact made the New York Times top 10 list. So because of that, there's so much demand for these people that they're hard to get hold of at this point. So either we had the sort of choice of just plowing ahead with the book while it's fresh, waiting. And we thought, well, rather than wait, because we've invested our 2 weeks, we put 2 weeks effort into each book. We've invested our 2 weeks in reading the book. We should just get the podcast out while the book's fresh in front of everybody, rather than wait for Kara's diary to open up, which it might never do, I guess.
Yeah, she's definitely, I mean, she's a busy woman because even when she hasn't released a book, like she she has obligations with sponsors, and now she has her own podcast. So we won't hold it against her. I still love Kara anyway.
Maybe she'll invite us on her podcast to talk to her about it.
Hey, you never know. We can always dream, right, Alan?
Okay, saying that you love Kara, and this is in fact the second Kara Goucher book that we've covered, is part of the reason, I guess, why we wanted to read this book in the first place.
It's definitely the reason I wanted to read this book. Kara can write whatever she wants and I will read it, I promise. So I've looked up to her for a long time, and back when I decided that I was following these three women from the US because Canada decided not to send any women to the Olympic marathon. It was just Runner's World magazine. So I would get all the editions that had anything about like Kara, Des, and Shalane in them. So that's, I've been a bit of a Kara Goucher nerd ever since then. I was really looking forward to this book. When we got it, we kind of had to wait a bit because we had other things to read, and it was just sitting on my shelf, like calling my name.
Liz.
Yeah. Yes,
I'm here.
literally.
Read me now.
Mm-hmm.
Put those other books down.
It's a good thing that I'm kind of disciplined. I didn't pick it up before it was that book's turn.
I didn't actually realize before you told me, but it was kind of pretty mean and pretty tough of I guess Athletics Canada not to send girls to the what was it,
they were the fastest women in Canada by a lot, like those two. And they actually had the Olympic standard, but the Canadian Olympic team standard was harder, and they didn't achieve that one, but only by I don't know, it was not by a lot, like a few seconds. But they didn't achieve it, and so they
so that was the qualifying for the London Olympics in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you were Lanny Marchand, you'd be, it's disappointed is not the word really, is it?
Yeah.
You'd be devastated.
Yeah, and I think she was, because I think she really tried to fight for it. I'm not the only one that thought it was a bit unfair. What I had heard at the time was that apparently Athletics Canada only wanted to send people that were I guess competitive against the best in the world. They didn't just want people to participate.
Had chances of medals rather than.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's really true, but I mean, that the decision looks like that, because I mean, they were good enough to go to the Olympics. They just weren't good enough in Athletics Canada's eyes.
It's not that long ago, and it seems incredibly short-sighted, because the sort of view now is, well, if you get a chance to send somebody to the Olympics, you should send them, because they may not win a medal and they may not have a time to win a medal at that race, But what you're doing, you could be just preparing them for 4 years' time.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've had the Olympic experience. And we see from reading this book and other books, that experience in itself is really, really valuable.
Mm-hmm.
People get a rehearsal of what to do, and they see the environment, and they deal with the pressure and all the different things like the village and training arrangements. And
when you just think about like you think about the greatest marathoner, I mean, on the female side of all time, Paula Radcliffe. I mean, look how many races she won, and she didn't medal at any of the Olympics. And so, it's like, it's that thing. It's sort of like, it's like one day, and you just never know what's going to happen. It could be that for Lani or Krista Duchesne, maybe they would have gone to the Olympics, and maybe they would have done really well, and been in the top 10.
yeah.
But you don't know, because, they're judged on like this one performance. And for marathoners, it's hard to turn around and like try again, because you have to train for so long, and then you have to recover for so long. So
We know about that. We're marathon runners, and we're trying to run good, like hard, fastest times we can manage, and 2 times a year is about all we can raise.
Yeah. The other thing about this book is I really wanted to know what it was like to run with the Nike Oregon project. So, I was also kind of curious about that,
Yeah.
like what it's like to be part of an elite team. I mean, we sort of know a little bit with Matt Fitzgerald's book, where he went to run with
Matt Hart.
No, but Matt Fitzgerald, when he went to be part of
the running
a
with
high
the
level
dream,
team.
when he ran with the Hulk and Naz Elite.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we kind of know like how it is to train with but
Okay.
this is a different one. So I thought.
Yeah. I guess I thought, well, coming back to what I just said about Matt Hart, I just thought, well, we read Win at All Costs, which is sort of a journalistic expose on the Nike Oregon project. And I was interested to see whether, it looks the same from the inside as it looked from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess there's some overlap with that book, because Matt actually interviewed the Gouchers as part of his research for that. So there's a bit of overlap, but I was interested to see, how much corroboration there was and how much difference there was.
Mm-hmm.
I was sort of interested to wonder if, I was personally being too hard on Nike in terms of having a bit of a negative view towards Nike around this issue.
Yeah.
And wanted to cross-check that, because it's easy to be a zealot and sort of say, oh, they're terrible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I found that I think they're more terrible now than I did after Matt Hart's book, because
so did I.
Matt Hart, like he did also mention the good sides of Nike, like how much money they invest in the sport. And
Yes.
that's probably what got it all started, the whole idea of having elite runners, and having these like brand sponsored running teams. And it's basically, it kind of started with Nike's big investments in everything that was running. And so we kind of have them to thank for it. But after reading this book, I'm like, oh, so many years of just bad behavior.
Yeah, you think, okay, that was kind of a good thing to put money into the sport, but then you think, okay, if this is a consequence, then that erases the good thing. If this is how you put money into the sport and how you allow things to behave,
Mm-hmm.
it's totally unacceptable. Yeah, I had the same reaction as you in terms of being even more anti sort of Nike and their corporate attitude after reading this book.
Yeah. Did you learn something that you didn't know before?
Absolutely. Yeah. It seemed, reading the book, and correct my wording if I say this wrong, Liz, but it seemed to me, reading the book, that Alberto Salazar was actually sexually abusive towards Kara.
Yeah.
Like I was shocked when I read that.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that was a very difficult thing for Kara to write into the book. She kept it secret from
her family, from her husband.
For a period. And that must have been terrible, sort of, suppressing that and kind of pretending, oh, it didn't really happen, sort of thing. I mean, it happened more than once. So
Yeah, it did. You know what I found really well written in this book was actually how, they led up to that moment, because it was like, you had, by the time you read that portion, you had all the background of how Alberto treated them like family, and how he helped her, he did help her become a better runner, or she became, I don't know, maybe she would have still been a better runner even if she hadn't been trained by Alberto. Like maybe that was just her progression, but she became a faster runner, started competing on the world stage while she was training under him. She saw him as like kind of a bit like a father figure. He took care of everything for her. He was always preoccupied with like her health and her well-being, or so it seemed. And so that leads up to that moment when like that first episode happens, and you can kind of understand why she didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah, she's almost been, whether deliberately or just passively, she's been sort of groomed or mentally corralled into a situation where she can't possibly just respond negatively to it.
Yeah. So one of the things that I didn't know before, or well, I guess I didn't realize, was the year that Kara was fourth in the Olympic marathon trials. So in 2016, I didn't realize that first and third place were wearing Vaporflies. They weren't out until 2017, but they had like a prototype model. And I remember watching those Olympic trials, and I was crushed for Kara when she came fourth, because 4 years earlier I'd watch her be part of the Olympic team, and I wanted her to be in the Olympic team again. And I almost saw like, it would have almost been the same Olympic team, because it ended up being Shalane, Des, and Amy Craig. It was she also trained with Shalane under the Nike team.
Yeah,
anyway,
I guess this was before the time that it became illegal for you to use shoes that weren't publicly available.
Yeah, because this was before we thought that there was anything you could do with shoes that made you faster. Yeah. So, I was doubly as crushed for Kara knowing that, because she explains in her book how much faster those shoes make you, like, and that 2% or whatever it is, whatever it would have been, would have put her in the top 3 if she had the easily same shoes on. Yeah, she would have won that day, I think she said in the book.
I guess there are so many things like that that happen, the what ifs in the world, but it's kind of sad. The other thing that I sort of learned in more detail is how, recently in the past, less than 10 years maybe, the world for a pro female athlete was kind of embarrassingly bad. With Nike sort of driving this, because they've got the financial power, and having one, contractual conditions that were terrible, I think was probably the not too strong a word. But also sort of abusing the business naivety of people who are just young kids, basically young athletes trying to live their dreams, and sort of sign here and we'll look after you, don't worry. And father figure people who say nice things and people take them on their word. And I'm thinking, as an ex sort of executive business person, I'm thinking, get it written down, have somebody write it down for you. Send me an email, write it down. Don't tell me that it's all going to be okay. And then later on, they say to Kara, well, yes, you've kept your social media presence up, but we
didn't race.
We pay you to race. Well, you said something else. No. It says in your contract you have to race.
That was terrible. It's like they completely took advantage of her, because it was as if they were, Alberto was kind of like, don't worry. And the worst part was she was completely transparent when she wanted to have children. Like they they knew in advance, and she asked all the questions, and they never gave her really a straight negative answer like that this and this could happen. It was sort of like she was just kind of led to believe whatever she wanted, which seemed like it was going to be fine because as long as she was otherwise relevant, they'll pay her. And then that wasn't the case at all. Then they just stopped paying her, and they didn't even warn her that they're going to stop paying her. They just one day her money wasn't deposited, which is like crazy.
Yeah, it's not. It wasn't even very humanistic sort of practices.
Mm-mm.
Even telling her bad news, it was conveyed in a manner which was
It was not conveyed.
Inhuman.
It was just like, it was just, she looked in her bank account and she's like, I didn't get paid. And then she had to actually go and ask
being
somebody
contractually
why.
ghosted by Nike.
Mm-hmm.
I just found that to be, terrible. One, terrible that they do that, and terrible that as leaders in the sport, they signal that as the leadership behavior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think, they're terribly innovative, technically. And, we see with the shoes, and we see with,
Forward
lots of stuff,
thinking and
putting money into track, and they are ambitious, creative, risk-taking. But then in contracts and human type sort of relationships, they're absolutely terrible.
Mm.
I mean, they're sort of, I don't know, old school, but old school like wartime. That's sort of, back in the 40s or something.
Yeah, like
bonkers.
it's a bit of an afterthought. So I guess we'll move on to the next question that we were
Sure.
asking ourselves. Did the book change something in our life? Do you want me to start with this one?
Yeah, you can go.
I mean, I'm not really sure how much it changed, but after reading Matt Hart's book and hearing about Mary Kane's experience with Nike Organ Project, I was convinced to no longer buy Nike products. But a little bit like you, I guess sometimes I want to think that companies can change, just like people can change. But I found that after reading this book and finding out like just how long that they treat athletes badly and to what degree, I think I just feel like I should be more thoughtful about how I spend my money and what brands I buy. And to, I mean, I know like at the same time, it's sort of like, well, I'm one person and how much difference can it make? But, if everybody spends their money to support companies that support women, I mean, in the end, that'll have an effect, I think.
I think what Kara says is I think I've heard her say this on a podcast, probably the Clean Sport Collective. If you buy Nike, if you buy Nike products, you're financing Alberto Salazar's appeal, which he subsequently lost.
And, yeah.
So why would you do that? He doesn't deserve that. Yeah. In fact, he deserves more public shaming, I think, than he's received.
Yeah, I think he still has a building or something named after him, or he's in the Hall of Fame, which, I mean, I guess you can't take away his marathon achievements. I mean, he ran well, so you can't take that away from him. What he did later after his running career was over was, shameful, but I guess you can't take everything away from him. Nobody's all bad.
Yeah, I don't think you need to take things away from him. I mean, you could say, he's won Boston, he's an Olympic medalist, I believe. And he was also in a position of power as a coach and cheated while he was doing that, effectively sexually abused some people on his team. And was supported in that from a corporate organization, which was Nike. I'm just stating the facts, state the good facts and the bad facts. I think I said after we read Matt Hart's book that I was done with Nike, so I've just reinforced my position. So did it change something in my life? No, it just kept me on the
right track.
on a track, which is, I've got money to spend in the sport, and in terms of apparel and shoes, I'm not going to buy Nike shoes, even if they're proven to be better than other shoes. Why? Because I find it easier to live with myself running 3 hours and 32 seconds in a pair of shoes where I don't feel bad about having spent the money on it, versus 2 hours 59, where I feel that I've supported a regime that really needs some significant change. And, you say you're just one person and I'm just one person, so that's two. But actually, we're talking about this on a podcast, and maybe we're talking to some people who've never heard this about Nike, and they're going, oh, I don't like to support companies who have those sorts of bad behaviors. Certainly with our club, when we start talking about, why do you have Saucony shoes? Why are you wearing Brooks running shorts? I can give some explanations, and also why do you like Hoka's? You can say, well, they're good, and these people do some good things that I've heard in the sport. They're signatories to the Clean Sport Collective, or they've developed for Hoka, for example, they've developed medical support programs for their runners. So they give them contracts that have good arrangements, and they're leading the way. And probably Nike are going to follow at some stage because they have to, not because they want to. Interestingly, Nike never seem to have come out publicly and said anything with respect to.
Yeah, I think that's too
the
bad.
Oregon project. It's just like it was shuttered and went away, and let's forget about it.
Yeah, I think that's too bad. I think that, if they were really going to change, like, they should come out and at least say something and acknowledge that, there are things that they did in the past that were not the best choices. And, I think, like, we can all forgive, just like you forgive people, you can forgive companies for doing the wrong thing. But the problem with Nike is that they don't even acknowledge that anything they did was wrong.
I think that's a key
like,
point, Liz, that you make there. It's a key point. They don't acknowledge, they won't accept that what they did was wrong and that they need to do better, because anybody could do anything that's wrong by accident, and there's many missteps that you can make. And maybe they will one day.
Maybe.
If their profit line starts to dwindle and they can make more by admitting it, they probably will.
Yeah. So, is there anything that you wish the author talked more about?
That's a hard question, because there's lots of stuff, but I guess one of the things that I noticed reading the book was there seemed to be relatively poor structure, controls, and professionalism around all the support services within the Oregon project. It became like it's like a secret project, and that's kind of cool in some ways. Like, we're going to make a secret, like, Skunkworks project, which is hidden away, and we're going to do the things that are going to break the mold, be paradigm shifting, and take us to the front. And if you're invited into that, you go, ooh, I'm in the secret project. That's all fine. But within that, you've got to have controls and systems and good responsibility and accountability. But it seemed to me like, the friend of somebody in Nike gets a job, and then they just get left to get on with it.
Yeah.
And then the psychologist arrives, and then they have like really shoddy practices where they're sharing secrets that have been shared with them in confidentiality with other people. All of that sort of stuff. I'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah, I couldn't believe, like, I couldn't believe that Kara, I think they weren't sure that he even had a license as a psychologist, but that's what he was calling himself when he joined the team. That's what he was. That's what his title was. That was why athletes went to go confide in him and work with him. So yeah, that was very strange. I have to say that for this part, like, I couldn't think of anything, because reading the book, like, there was just so much detail already. And even around things like that, I don't know how much she knew, like about the bigger system that was in place. So
It might have been cool as well if it was possible for people to talk about what was going down in some of the other projects, some of
mhm,
the other teams,
mhm.
because I suspect there were probably pretty poor contracts for women in all the running teams at that point. That's not
Yeah.
condoning what happened in the Oregon project. It was terrible, but it was probably one or 2 degrees more terrible than everybody else, with a few more illegalities and a few less controls.
Yeah, because it seemed like the other team that was under Nike, which was the Bowerman team that Shalane was with, it seemed
Yeah.
like it was almost like being part of a completely different team, but it was also under Nike, funded by Nike.
Salazar so just showed
Um,
us viewed those people as rivals.
which was interesting because
He wouldn't let his people. He didn't want them talking to them. He didn't want them
mhm.
talking to anyone.
He almost didn't even want them to be friends with each other because when Kara was like the first woman, I think, that he ended up coaching, but
Yeah.
there were others after, and it was almost like they weren't encouraged to get close to each other and be like friends, but they're on the same team under the same coach, which was very strange.
Yeah, and you kind of wonder why. I mean, where's the performance advantage to be gained through that? He wants everybody to be just like cold and hard, or is it
It seemed like it.
don't want them to get too warm and fuzzy, or
Hmm.
don't want them to share stories where they might have the courage to go and admit something because they can share a story and say, "Oh, that happened to me," or yeah, I think they've got some illegal substances as well, and they would gather up like maybe 2 or 3 people, and they would gather up some courage to do something.
Hmm.
Um,
I guess you feel powerless when you're alone.
yeah, it was almost
So
like psychological manipulation, almost seemed to me. I don't know whether that's in hindsight.
yeah, it's always easier to see these things after they've happened. When you're in it, it must not be that easy. Do you think there was anything missing in the story?
Yes, couple of few things. I think the big thing that's missing for me, that the nature of the book means it's very difficult to do, but what's Nike's perspective? Like Kara always gives a really good description and well thought through and well researched about what she was receiving in terms of information. She'd get a message passed down from Nike through Alberto or
Hmm.
through one person. There was the name of one person who, Cap, was it?
Yeah,
Um,
he comes up
who
a lot.
who used to kind of talk with her. But where were those communications going? What were the conversations that were held between Alberto and Nike, and what was getting discussed at Nike? That would have been
Mm,
that would have been pretty interesting. I mean, were
it
they
would have been
saying,
pretty
well,
interesting.
we just took her on as an afterthought. We don't really want to put more money into her, or what was the perspective? Maybe that'll come out one day. Somebody in Nike will retire and decide to tell the whole story from their
Mhm.
perspective.
You
That would
never
be,
know.
I think that would be good. The other thing from my point of view is what really went down with Galen Rupp and Mo Farah,
Yeah, that's
because
true. That's a little bit
they both won
fuzzy.
medals.
They both really dominated while they were with
They dominated
Nike.
hard. Kara is of the opinion, certainly with respect to Galen Rupp, that he got treated at some stage with testosterone, whether he realized it or not. That he almost certainly did, and that was able to be disguised when he was in competition or diluted out by some of the other treatments he was getting through topical application.
Hmm.
And there was, I guess, a bit less inference because he wasn't there for as long about Mo Farah. Every time she mentions them, she kind of suggests maybe something was happening, and then always says afterwards in the story, but Galen and Mo have denied this having
Yeah.
ever having any contact. So it's kind of you make your own mind up sort of thing.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess she has her suspicions, and I mean with reason, because I mean she was there, she kind of saw a lot of things that were very suspicious. And then their performances also, I mean, I remember when Mo was so it's funny because like I remember watching Mo Farah on the track running the 5,000 and the 10,000 and just like blowing everyone out of the water with his finishing sprint.
Hmm.
Um but I didn't know that back then he was with the Nike Oregon Project. I found out he was with the Nike Oregon Project like somehow on social media there was like a picture with him training at the Nike Oregon Project, but this was like well after he had won several
I think he got invited
races.
to the project later on. He
Okay, so
wasn't
he
part of the starting lineup, so to speak.
Okay, so he was dominant already, but then he went there and
Yeah.
became even more dominant. Yeah. I don't know like how it all coincided, but I do remember seeing him. And then I do remember finding out he's with the Nike Oregon Project, and I had like I was a little surprised. Like I didn't know because he's I mean he's from the UK. So for me it didn't really make sense
Yeah.
why he was going to the US to
Well, because he
train
was
with
good.
Alberto, but I guess yeah,
Because he was good and
this is
Nike wanted
good.
the best.
Mhm. So I guess for me, I'm not sure if it's missing from the book because Kara talks a lot about her experience with the Nike Oregon Project, but I would have liked to continue the story a little bit because I know that in recent years Kara had some health challenges, but she's like seeking treatment and she seems to be like very, very, very motivated to run. And so I'm kind of curious, like what keeps her that motivated? Because a lot of people would probably just like, she's had 20 years of running at a high level or whatever she had. But I think most people would have just like hung up their shoes and, moved on to something else. But she just, she constantly, like, she's getting treatment for this runner's dystonia.
Yeah.
And it
Which kind of
seems like
affects her
it's,
balance or something while she's running.
yeah. And it seems like it's a bit of a hit and miss. Like it doesn't seem like it's a straight path to recovery or anything. But she's just seems to stick with it and continue. And it's just, she just wants to run, even though she won't be going back to the Olympic marathon trials or anything. But it seems that even despite that, she's just so motivated to run. So I'd have been curious to learn a bit about the story afterwards. But I guess you can't put everything in one book. So maybe there will be a Kara Goucher memoir number 2 one day.
Maybe there will. Maybe there will be. I think I'd rather read the Nike executive memoir on this. I think get the other side.
Okay, you want to read the Nike emails to each other.
I would. At one stage, Kara actually thought that maybe she'd been doped without realizing it
Mm-hmm.
because, they're always getting given multivitamin injections and things to drink and told, this is anti-doping committee approved. No
Mm-hmm.
problem, just drink it. But, they don't get to read what's on the label.
No, because there's no label. It's a
No, it's
drink in a
just like,
glass
go and see the
or
doctor, give you a jab.
yeah. Or like
Uh,
take this little blue pill. It's vitamin B12. And
yeah.
it's like vitamin B12 is not a little blue pill.
Yeah, and oil is applied during massage and stuff like that, and you go, oh, could it have something? Could there be something in the gel that they're rubbing on my skin? Which is, I think, quite a possibility because even Salazar admits to having a tube of androgel that was visible in the training areas
Mm-hmm.
and out on the table and stuff, which is kind of strange.
But yeah, I mean, she's not 100% sure, but she thinks that she was able to avoid like most accidental doping. Like, she describes one time being
Yeah,
handed that blue pill, and so she pretended to take it because she didn't want to create conflict, but then she sort of spit it in her napkin and then had it hidden until
we
she
threw it
left.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, she just said she was constantly given bottles of medications that didn't have her name on it and things like that, like which were harmless in itself, because it was things that, like, Alberto wanted her to take a different type of thyroid medication because she was on thyroid medication, which is legal because she has hypothyroidism, and it's not a performance enhancing drug. But he wanted her to switch medications because this other medication had a side effect of weight loss, and he was so obsessed with weight loss. Like it's insane. He would weigh his athletes like in front of everybody.
Yeah, and I think that's weight loss is, the obsession with weight loss is one of those sort of psychological negative effects, which leads to physiological negative effects as well. That seems to have played out across the whole of the athletics in North America for a period.
Next on the list, what message did we come away with? I have two to contribute.
Go on, then you give me one, and we can make a sandwich. I'll give you one, and then you can put the sandwich on top.
So I brought this up because you were actually like going towards that direction, but it seems like having an eating disorder or being on the verge of an eating disorder is like a rite of passage into womanhood for a lot of runners. Like, it just seems it's so common. And over and over, we hear that the athletes who have long, successful careers get back on track with like fueling properly, and that enables them to then be great athletes. But for some reason, there's still male coaches making comments about weight. And I guess one of the messages I came away with is that it's not okay for teams to be doing things like public weigh-ins, especially for female athletes. And, well, female athletes should hopefully, they won't stand for it in the future. But I think it still happens.
These things are almost generational in terms of their longevity. It takes almost like all the old coaches to retire, and new people with new attitudes to come in for it to be completely eradicated. One of the messages that I came away with was it was extremely difficult to have a pro career in running only 10 years ago. I think particularly if you were a woman. And I guess it touches on your point. USA college coaches probably have the biggest responsibility because they set the whole thing in motion at that point. If you get coached when you're just a first year in university into, you got to lose weight and you shouldn't expect this sort of treatment, and you get misogynistic sort of attitudes towards you, then it goes on and on and on. It becomes the setting.
Yeah. And I mean, we saw it with Kara. She just thought, like, when things like that would happen, she just figured that was the price she had to pay in order to become an Olympian. Like, that's just the way it had to be. And she was pretty lucky though about the whole eating disorder thing, because she was well surrounded, and she met Adam, and Adam kind of noticed that she had like a bit of problems with certain foods, and he sort of helped her with that. And
there's a really nice piece in the book where he tries to give her a Dorito, one Dorito, and she says, "Oh no, I can't." And it sort of encapsulates all this eating disorder thing in one conversation. And he says, "What do you mean you can't?" I don't want to eat the Dorito. And he says, no, eat the effing Dorito, eat it now. And he kind of almost says to her, you can't have this attitude towards eating. And it's all centered around eat one Dorito. And then, like, it comes down to a whole career and a whole marriage is all hanging around this Dorito. Eat the Dorito. That was quite nicely put in the book, I think. Is a good story.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everybody needs support like that. I think when it has to come at the right time though, I think as well. I think if she had been, 10 years into an eating disorder, it's a lot more difficult, but it seemed like she was a little bit like fresh, like it was sort of it was becoming a bit of a problem, but it was probably not set in, over a long period of time. I guess a bigger issue in the book was the sexual and psychological abuse that Kara went through. And I think one of the things I came away with is just that young athletes should know that it's not normal and it's not okay. And it's okay to move on if you experience any of these things, especially now, because it's not really so acceptable anymore. There are more and more, women athletes that come out and talk about it. There was Mary Kane, and now there's Kara, and there was the whole scandal in the gymnastics world. There was
Yes.
a coach that was abusing females, and it was just generations of female gymnasts that were abused by this guy, and he finally got convicted. So I think more and more it's like not okay. So know that you can have your athletic career and you don't have to put up with abuse.
Yeah, and if it saves, I guess if the book saves one person, well done, Kara. Yeah. If it enables one person to speak, one person to, I always remember seeing Mary Kane go over and speak with Caitlin Tui at a run meet where, Mary was just giving up because she'd had enough with, the abuse that she got over weight loss and psychological. She ended up cutting herself and all sorts of things. And she recovered from that. But you could see Caitlin Tui coming in to the sport and going to be a superstar and be subjected to all the pressures of poor coaching practices, and almost went over to her and I guess offered a connection designed to avoid that if possible. And let's hope more and more and more that's the case. I kind of think it is, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, Mary Kane, I think probably in that moment is a hero because, she's all fresh coming from that experience, but she took the time to, make sure Caitlin stays on the right track. And I feel sad for Mary because I don't know if she's recovered. Like she's probably recovered from, some of the psychological issues that were going on, but like she never came back to high level competitive running. And I feel like, if she hadn't been sort of,
I think she decided it wasn't for her, probably because of the treatment that
maybe
she had to go through.
Maybe, which is also sad because if she had had the same opportunities as Caitlin, I mean, look at Caitlin. I mean, didn't she just break the 5,000 meter NCAA record or something? She just broke a record. I mean, like this week.
Yeah, she's breaking records all the time. And I guess probably we'll see when we'll get a sign that things have been improved when the so-called footlocker curse becomes well and truly broken. So all the college girls who are brilliant athletes at college level, when they all start to transfer to be brilliant athletes at the professional level, because that has been a very rare, very, very rare occurrence in the past
for women.
in
For men,
USA women's athletics. Yeah, for men not so much.
No, yeah. Actually, Foot Locker is like the high school. I think this is the Foot Locker Championships.
Oh yeah,
and then but anyway, either way, it's the Foot Locker curse because it never translates. The winners of the Foot Locker race, they end up not being the Olympians.
Yeah, they never make it.
I guess last on the list is who would you recommend this book to?
I feel while I've been discussing it, it's been like heavy. The discussion's been quite heavy, and in fact, the book itself was actually quite an easy read. It was like exciting to read and shocking and page turning, and the chapters were short, and the information was concise and fairly punchy. So it was actually a great book to read. Much easier to read than say Matt Hart's expose, Win at All Costs, which was more journalistic. This was more story and experiential, if that's a word. Don't know if that is a
I
word.
don't know. I'd accept
Who
it as a
knows?
word.
So who would I recommend it to? I suppose I'd recommend it to anybody who loves running, anybody who likes, I don't know, shocking drama stories, anybody who likes a detective novel,
Yes. Yep.
probably anybody who likes running history as well, because of modern history, because this sort of Kara takes you through, the last 10 years of performance, middle distance and endurance running.
Mm-hmm. I'll just add to that, Kara Goucher fans, because you'll love her even more after reading her
Oh, yeah, I do.
story. Because, I mean, it just took so much courage to sort of, I guess, stand up to Nike and leave Nike. Like when she finally decided she'd had enough and she left. I mean, it still took a lot of courage because even though she was ready to leave and do anything it took to leave, she still didn't want to create a whole lot of waves, in the news. And I do remember when she was finally leaving and she ended up with Wazelle as her sponsor. And I remember
Yeah,
like it was just kind of just it happened, there was
yeah.
no drama around it.
No,
But it was actually a lot more involved than what we saw on the outside.
it was good to hear the detail on that in the book. First of all, I think Kara was probably quite pioneering in terms of contractually getting out from under, sort of complete ownership by Nike, who just will give you the contract. If you don't have a contract with us, you don't have anything. So you're going to be
Mm.
very poor. And oh, you have a house and you have a child. Well, I don't know how you're going to pay for those. Um, really going into a situation where she was able to have multiple contracts. So she was able to have a contract with a shoe provider, and but not exclusive to them. And then she was able to have a contract with other people, so smaller, different contracts with people who maybe couldn't afford to have Kara Goucher 100% on their payroll, but could afford to give her a contract to promote one of their things or one of their stuffs. Um, in particular, a nice piece in the storyline was she's trying to get out of her wait out her final contract with Nike, and they had a clause in their contract where they were able to retain her irrespective of her looking for another contract if they could match the contract with someone else. And so
Mm-hmm.
she's talking to Wazelle about getting a contract, and they said, "Oh, we can't give you a contract." And they said, "Well," she said, "Well, why not?" She says, "Well, we can't give you anywhere near the amount of money that you're worth, and it would be embarrassing for us to offer you like $20,000. I can't remember what the number was, but I think it was
Mm-hmm.
$20,000. It would be sort of embarrassing, so we can't give you a contract." Kara loved Wazelle, and I think she loved is it Sally
Yeah, Bergen, I
Berger,
think.
Bergerson, or who owns Wazelle?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she ended up doing a deal where she would get some money and 2% of the company to be on their payroll, which absolutely foxed Nike completely because they couldn't match the contract.
Mm-hmm.
And they were thinking, well, we'll easily match the contract anybody else can offer. We'll end up paying her less than we were thinking because we have so much money and other people don't have so much money. Um, but Wazelle actually offered her 2% of the of the company. So Nike couldn't match that. So she got out from under her contractual obligations to Nike because they couldn't match the contract because they couldn't give her 2% of Nike.
Yeah, that was so smart. Yeah, that was surprising, but it was fun. It was fun to see how they got around that.
You got any more people that you want to recommend the book to?
I think I'd also written young athletes that are starting their journey because I think,
Yeah.
they should be aware of what can happen, and also know that it's not normal. And just I find that the book really does a good job of kind of building up the story that you see how it can evolve over time. I mean, all of these things happened over like a decade. It didn't happen over a few months. So at any point, when you realize that that, there's a line that's been crossed. It's it's to know that it's not normal.
As a warning for young athletes, basically.
Mm-hmm. And also because like Kara did a lot of fantastic things. So it's amazing to read about those. And it's really fun to read about her beginnings, like how she got into running. It was actually like her grandfather that got her into running and would bring her to races. And
yeah, I mean, we didn't talk much about the sort of the early days and Kara's background, but that was pretty cool.
mm-hmm.
Okay, overall summary.
Overall summary, I guess I'm just echoing like what you said earlier, but I thought the book was really well written. It had a nice flow. It was like a story. It was like you were getting to know Kara. I loved learning about Kara's beginnings. Like I said, like her family, how she got into running, her special relationship with her grandfather, and all of that. Like before diving into the whole Nike Oregon project, even that it was interesting to learn about how all that happened, because Alberto actually wanted her husband Adam, and so they kind of came in as a package. So he ended up coaching her as well. I thought the story of the relationship with Alberto was really well developed to help the audience understand how Kara could stick around after a first episode of sexual abuse, and then actually, like, that's not where it ended. And I think it's really hard for people to figure out why victims of abuse preserve their relationships with their abusers. And this book, I thought, described it really well, how it happens. It's almost surprising, like when it finally develops into that. And I think that's often how it happens, and that's why victims don't speak out as much as
They
they should.
place themselves into positions of self-denial. Yeah, this can't be happening to me. It didn't really happen, or it's not really what I'm thinking. Or
the other thing we didn't really talk about, but that I thought was really well done, was like I loved learning about what it's like to race on the world stage, and what it's like to be an elite. Because we runners, we decide on a race schedule based on like what race we want to do. And it's really different because Kara doesn't actually choose a lot of her races, because a lot of them were sort of outlined in the obligations of her contract. And so she had to respect those. And then it was also like about appearance fees and, going places where she'd get appearance money.
And she ended up having to race very quickly when after pregnancy, so she could maintain her contract by demonstrating that she was racing.
Mm-hmm.
So her contract's forcing her to do something that's actually very unhealthy for her, probably.
Yeah. It was interesting to see that whole other side, because we have a very different view of how it is to be an elite runner. It's like, oh,
yeah,
being an elite runner is like, it's a great life. You get to train all day, you get to hang out with other runners.
it's more fun just being retired and being a runner like me. I get to pick my own races. I can still train when I want. I can nap when I need to. I don't have somebody else. Well, maybe just my running buddy telling me, "Oh, we should do this. We should do this." Yeah, for me, I mean, it was interesting to see that, but it was also, I think, it took all the stardust off it. It was like, it's not that great. It's not that great. You must really, really want to do it to get paid. What you get paid, and I don't know.
I think in a way,
driven by your ability to succeed.
yeah, I think in a way, Kara almost got like robbed of her full experience, because it seems like the teams that are, well, the ones that are very much on social media, like the Hoka Nazalite team, it seems like those girls, like they're all training together and pushing each other, and they go to the race, like, well, I don't know if they always go to races together, but they often, like Steph Bruce will be racing the same marathon as
there are two or three people in one race.
So it seems like they're having a great experience, and I feel like that whole part of Kara's elite running experience, she never got that, because she was always like the only female. It was like her with Alberto and the men.
Yeah, somebody like Tuliamuk on the Hooker Nazali team seems to be getting treated much more respectfully and correctly as well, having a baby and coming back, and trying to do that in a coherent manner.
Yeah.
And yeah, it seems to be a team sport.
Exactly.
From their point of view, rather than you be an isolated individual. It would be fun almost to be on that team.
Yeah. So anyway, all in all, I mean, I thought it was a great read, and I would recommend it.
Yeah, I thought I was an absolute page turner. I mean, I took hardly any notes while I was reading because I was too engrossed in the story. And, you know, you just got to the end of a quick chapter and then another one would come and you go, ooh, I'll just have to read this as well. And
you're like, I'll just read the first page and then I'll put my notes for the last chapter. And then you read the first page, but before you know it, the chapter's over. And
exactly.
Yeah. Then you have like 3 chapters and you have no notes.
Yeah. One small thing. We got copies of the hardback. I noticed that on the front it says The Longest Race, which is the title of the book, but it actually says Inside the Secret World of Abuse, Doping, and Deception on Nike's Elite Running Team. That's quite a big print accusation or statement. And I guess they've taken trouble to, in saying that, make sure that they can back that up. But nobody from Nike has come at them for that, which is kind of interesting for me. And the other thing is there's sort of a sort of badass type picture of Kara on the front. I'm not sure whether that's good or not, because that looks like almost like the image that Nike wanted to portray. She's sort of dressed in black with her arms folded, looking.
Yeah. At the same time, though, it just looks like the representation of her standing up for herself.
Oh, maybe
in the face of Nike. I don't know. I was kind of wondering like when that picture would have been from, because it's too small to see if that kit has a little Nike swoosh, or does it have like a little Oiselle like birds on it. So
yeah, I guess it mustn't be Nike because it'd have a big swoosh somewhere that you would be able to see.
Sometimes those swooshes are kind of small.
Kara, tell us about your photograph on the front of your book. Give the name of the photographer and the design, but not whether it's Nike gear or not, or comes from that era or not. So I thought that was a little bit ambiguous. The book itself doesn't have any photographs in it either. I would have liked to see some young Kara, fresh-faced, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed with her sisters, or those kind of photographs. I think that would have been an extra cool thing to have.
Agreed.
You can't tell me they didn't have budget to put photographs in. They must have decided not to do it.
Maybe they figured like they're all on social media, so
yeah,
don't need to have them in the book.
Yeah.
I don't know. Because when the book was sort of just coming out, there were, I think she still does occasional posts where she'll have like a passage from the book and she'll have a picture. And so there's been a few
just
pictures
defending Kara because you love her.
Yeah, exactly. She can do no wrong in my eyes.
Anything else you want to say about the book?
No, I think
when Kara makes the next book, she has to come on the show. This is the second time we've done a Kara book without Kara, so we're not doing a third one. The next Kara book, she has to come on, otherwise we're not covering it. You hear us, Kara, if you're listening.
Except she probably heard my comments and she's like, that other one is too easy. Like she's going to read any book that I write and they're going to review it on the podcast. Yeah. Because Liz is going to put it on the list.
Number one fan, whatever I do.
Yep.
Outro time?
Outro time.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Running Book Reviews. A big thank you to the publisher Simon & Schuster for providing a review copy of the book The Longest Race by Kara Goucher and Mary Pilon. If you'd like to leave us feedback about how we can improve our podcast, or you'd like to suggest a book you'd like us to review in future episodes, please leave us a comment on social media. We are Running Book Reviews on Facebook and Instagram, and on Twitter, we are reviews_running. Please also follow us on social media to find out about new episodes when they are released, or you can simply subscribe to the podcast on your favorite streaming platform. If you've been listening for a while and wondering how you can help us out, there are a few ways. If you enjoy the podcast, spread the word. Oh, by the way, if you don't enjoy the podcast, don't tell anyone at all. Tell your friends about our podcast and share a link to your favorite episode with a running partner. You can leave us a review on Apple Podcast. We'd appreciate a few words of review. We've seen people giving us 5 stars on a regular basis, but not so many people who leave us written reviews. So just take time out and write us, one phrase of encouragement. That really helps us. And also you can give us a rating out of 5 stars on Spotify. We are also on Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, if you go to Buy Me a Coffee and just look for Running Book Reviews with Alan and Liz, you can look at various outtakes and updates and chats and things that are book related and non-book related, such as us talking about our 3-hour marathon attempt, photographs of Liz's wedding, chats and outtakes with other authors. You don't have to buy us a coffee. You can go there and look at that for free. But if you want to buy us a coffee, you can do that too. That's all for Running Book Reviews. Bye for now.
Bye.